everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Jessica Henry Gray and I'm excited to have you with me today. Today I'm going to demonstrate painting this pond back here, and I will just tell you right up front, it is like wild America here, or what is it, Wild Kingdom here. The geese are all over squawking and so forth, so I'll try to edit some of that out, but I mean, it is middle of April and nature is taking its course and these geese are fighting all over the place. I'm safe, but yeah, it's pretty exciting here. So you'll see some of it in the background while I work on this painting. So I'm going to demonstrate painting an early spring pond at Goose Pond. We're calling it Goose Pond today. Be sure to check out the links below about my upcoming workshops. There is still space in the France workshop, as well as, well, it's a little bit late for Florida, but you can still join. That's coming up in about 2 weeks. And this is the middle of April 2022. So, but I've also got Oregon coming up in September. So I am wanting to encourage you to take a look at those links below, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I always enjoy your comments. All right, you guys, I will see you on the other side of this intro. Today I'm in the Cleveland area, Metro Parks in Ohio here, and I'm just walking around a park that I just really love. It's called Bradley Woods, and I'm looking for a place to set up and paint off the beaten track. There's a lot of woods around me here. I'll circle slowly so you don't get dizzy. But I'm just looking around at these woods and anything where I might see an interesting composition, or I'd kind of like to just study some trees. So at this point, I'm always just open to whatever nature suggests. So it looks like it might rain, so I didn't bring my umbrella today for keeping the sun off my easel. So it's just my pack, and I have a little bit bigger canvas today. And it is that one that I've put a coat of oil ground gesso on. And so it's an old painting that I'm just covered over. So I'm gonna look around, and I love the puddles with the tree reflections in there. Maybe I'll do something like that. So I'm just gonna look for a little bit. There's a pond up ahead, so I'm gonna go see what that's all about. Okay, so I've settled on this scene behind me. I love the little pond here, and might throw in a Canadian goose or something, I don't know. But I like the bit of green grass as it kind of tucks into the water back there. And it's just an overall peaceful feeling right here. I may back up a little bit because I like some of these trees right here behind me sort of draping over, but I'll just poke around a little bit and get set up. I think this makes an interesting subject right here too. Just the reflection of the tree down in this little tiny creek. This is beautiful too. I like this composition here, with the way that the trees come down into the water, and a little bit of green there and the green over there, and the gradation of the light in the water as it goes from light to dark. I'm always looking for places like that where I see an interesting pattern of beautiful movement of light. So today this painting is going to be about atmosphere. So I'll get set up. And I wanted to show you, I was able to get this palette saver working for me. So what I did is I'll show you here. Underneath my palette box, I have a little bungee cord. So that goes on the underside, and then I just drilled 2 holes on this right here and here, and just tied a little cord to it, and that gives the bungee cord a little bit of leeway. I did try to hook the bungee cord right in the holes, but this big metal thing kind of got in the way, so the cord here really worked the best for that. And so I just shoved this whole thing right in the tube, and because there's clove oil on the little felt tabs at the end of each tube, apparently I don't have to throw it in the freezer. This is the first time I've used it, so we'll see. And I can always throw it in the freezer too and allow it to keep indefinitely that way as well. But all right, so gave it a try, and I do like this feature, so I'm going to use it more often. All right, so what I'm doing here is I have the general shape of my canvas on my sketch here, and I'm working out the divisions of where I want the parts about this scene that I love. And what I really loved was the water in here, and I liked the green pieces of the lawn coming down in, but I don't want them to be equal size and importance. See, right now they're both equal, so I have to pick one that I want to come forward more, and I think I'm going to pick this side because it's closer to us and it has a little bit more interesting shape. So I'm going to make this a little more interesting and then push this one further back this way so that we have more of that stair step. And then I'll let some of the water go back this way, and that means then that the boundary of my canvas comes about like this, so that I have it predominantly water. You could say it's about 2/3 water and 1/3 trees and little bits of sky peeking through. Not that interesting, but just providing a backdrop with some trees so that all of this in the water will make more sense. And then I'll put some more clusters of trees in this island here with their reflections down below and work that out. So I've got mostly a middle tone canvas here. This is all going to be middle tone with some darker accents in the wet part of the mud and some of the trunks, and then some light white down here and maybe some bits in the sky. So I need to portion those out and decide as far as compositionally where those whites are going to best lead the eye in, like that. So some of these, without this becoming distracting from this, I want it to help compositionally move the view around this way. Maybe I can put a goose or something, a couple of geese back here, so that it sort of ping pong balls back this way. With this being brightly green and more texturally interesting, it's going to draw the attention, so I need to sort of bounce things around this way. Okay, so I'm going to leave this over here and get going on my work. Now I am going to begin with a toned canvas that is a little bit darker, the sienna and ultramarine blue mixture. For colors, I have titanium white, cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow medium, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, phthalo blue. I had some cerulean blue out the other day. I don't think I'm going to use it today. Phthalo green and alizarin permanent. Okay. So a little bit of thinner. I'm outside, so I'm not smelling it, so I don't really mind it. A little bit of blue, a little bit of sienna. And this is, I did put an oil ground over an old painting, and that's fine. It's a nice linen canvas, so I'm going to use it today. What I'm aiming for here with toning the canvas is just a nice neutral, grayish, brownish color that I can leave and let it act as my trees back there. So I'm sort of going with that neutral gray color. Gray-brown. Now we have a very overcast sky today, so I didn't bother with an umbrella. But I have been using them a lot more, and I do prefer the white umbrellas because they don't cast such a heavy shadow. So, but today I didn't grab it because it's got a nice overcast feeling of the day. It's quite warm today, actually, even though it doesn't really look like it. We're at about approaching 70, so it's just nice, really nice weather. That's close enough. I'm going to wipe this off. I'd like to wipe it off because I do not want a slick layer of the mineral spirits on my canvas. It will inhibit adhesion, and so it's important to get that off. Kind of like the texture of it too when I'm done, and it has that nice linen feeling. Take a smaller brush and draw in my composition as I have it laid out. So I said the division would be about 2/3. That doesn't have to be exact. And that's just a guideline. Okay, that gives me sort of a ballpark. I'm going to take a little bit of light now, just a white. Just give myself a few indications of where this lighter value is going to be on here. It's not much, but I wanted to just play again on the concept that I was enjoying from the beginning, and that was this movement of light. So I've got the lighter whites in here. And then it fades to getting a little bit darker down here. So I just want to make sure that as I'm jotting my notes on canvas, basically, that I recall those elements that I really liked. Never lose sight of your vision, your concept. And this is my concept for this painting. That movement of light, these passages where it's brighter, and then you can see the gradation as it gets darker and darker towards us. And there's some back in here. And I'll just take a little bit just to give some indication of the sky through the trees back there. And I'm thinking about the shapes and making these interesting and connect. I'm thinking about these pieces of sky as like music notes and how they sort of play through the woods, up and down, like little staccato passages. And make them interesting. Remember, your painting is the thing that lasts. These woods will change over the years, but your painting is what hangs on the wall. Or not. I have stacks and stacks of them that never make it to the wall, but that's part of the journey. There's going to be more of this these light pieces up toward the top, because that's where the sky is peeking through the leaves of the tree. Well, the branches, there's not much for leaves right now. Shade, because it helps to direct the eye around this way to when we come back over. There's a tree trunk over there that is just about right here. I'm going to give that a little bit of importance. Make it just a little bit lighter gray. There. Put that down in the water. See, that'll kind of help. I think it's a little bit too balanced with that, so I'm going to tone this one down just a little bit. So now I'm going to work my way from the back to the foreground. Just mixing up a nice neutral gray color for the trees back there. Sienna, blue, some white. I can see some bits of, sometimes there's a little bit more of the sienna russet color. Sometimes there's a little bit more of the ochre. And then I'm seeing some bright green on a new tree in there. So remember too, I'll just leave some of the canvas showing through. Let that help me out. I don't want to make a big fuss about it. Just keep it subdued back there. Trying to see all of the trees of the forest as being connected as a universal whole. I don't want to see individual, this tree, this tree, this tree. I just want to squint down and see it all as a mass and connect as many pieces of this painting as I can. So if I'm squinting and this is all part of a connective whole, then I can have basically an easier time of working out my masses, and that's what that is all about. All right, so now I've made a dark olive green mixture, and I'm working on the distant shoreline. Just working on some horizontal brush strokes to get that shoreline feeling like the forest has come down to the floor of the forest floor, and keeping my brush strokes now very horizontal. And some of the colors are very, very subtly, the shift in cool tones of greens to grays, olives is very subtle, but I just wanted it to have the sense of being distant. And you can see too, in the background, it's a very atmospheric day. So all of those colors in the background have to maintain some degree of grayness. And so that's what I'm working on back there. Keeping my brush also in a sort of a horizontal angle like that to do the tree trunk. Just kind of helps. You saw when I laid them down, I just sort of made a stripe. But I'll come back through with a little bit thicker paint and pull some of the trunks out a little bit more. And I'm taking a smaller brush now and putting in some accents of some of the darker tree trunks. I don't want them to stand out too much because, again, any contrast will draw our eye to the background, and I don't want that. I moved the camera because there was a glare on the canvas. So I'm coming back around to the tree line where it meets the sky, and I'm softening the areas where the branches meet up with the sky holes and letting it look sort of smudgy, where those twigs and the finer branches are meeting with the background area. I noticed that some of the trees in the background have a very lace-like green, spring green coming through. So I'm taking some cad yellow light with some of the phthalo green and some white. And I'm mixing it's almost like a celery green, just to dab in so we just barely feel some of those trees. It's sort of a suggestion of spring coming through. And you'll notice in the background here when I zoom in, some of those trees are pinkish. I used some alizarin because some of the buds in early spring have sort of a pink flavor to them. And so I wanted to play with some of that so it feels more colorful than just a drab gray painting. So again, that's cadmium yellow light with some phthalo green and white. Gives you a really soft, bright, springy green. If you paint it thicker and apply it with broader brush strokes, it has a very sunlit effect. But you have to be very careful with that phthalo green. A little bit too much and it will kind of kill that effect. So you have to be very selective with it. I'm using a little bit more of the phthalo green and some white to do some of that grass in the distance. So now we're getting to the water, and I'm taking some burnt sienna and ultramarine blue with the yellow, ochre, and white mixture that I have there on my palette already. And just getting a nice soft mixture going. I'm looking at the water as it's back by the tree line, and I'm seeing the reflection as it comes down. I want to gauge, it looks dark to me, but I want to be careful not to paint it too dark. So I'm looking at and comparing all the other darks in the painting to it. And that's what you have to do when you're working out your values. Just watch and be careful that you don't just stare at one thing and think that you have that value figured out. You have to look at your whole scene to take it all in and gauge by comparison. And that's one of the ways that you can get your values more accurate. You can even put on your easel a piece of black and a piece of white paper or whatever, just so that you have that comparison, always at the ready, so that you can have that gauge. It's helpful because when you're looking at your scene, you think, gosh, that sure looks dark. But when you look at what is really dark, it's not as dark as you think, or as light, or whatever the case is. So as I'm working towards us and the water comes towards us, I'm adding a little bit more yellow ochre and white. The water itself, because it's a lake, it does seem to have a little bit more of the yellow ochre in it. And it's being reflected in it. The trees, and remember, everything that's reflected in water is a little darker than what it is being reflected. So obviously the trees are what's being reflected. So in the water, they're going to represent as being darker. So that's yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and blue, but I would encourage you to just practice mixing those three colors in different proportions. And there's a little white in there. White will always cool down anything it touches. So I'm adding white, especially in that background area, because I want it to be a little more cool and a little more atmospheric. I'm also taking into account the contour and shape of the distant shoreline. I haven't put in the dark of the shoreline yet. I'll come back and do that. No reason, I just haven't yet. I'm working on the water, but I will come back through. Oh, look at this shot. It's so beautiful. That beautiful heron. So blocking in again the water as it's coming down towards us. One of the things that really drew me to this scene was, of course, this movement of light, how the trees reflected in the water and it created that dark. And then as the water, where the tree line hit the water, there was this brilliant light. And then as that light moved towards us, it got darker. So that was sort of the objective in painting this water. I loved that. So what I'm doing at this point is just blocking in those passages of the trees and the water. And now I'm putting in the lightest passages of the water as I see them in the scene before me. And I know that I'm going to be smoothing out some of these brush strokes. I do want them to be a little bit smoother just because they're representing the surface of the water. I'll come back through and put in a few more of the different features of the water surface later. And now I've mixed up a dark mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and I'm putting in the dark shoreline from far away just to really make it feel like that distant shore tucks into the water. It's very important to consider working in layers. Now I'm tempted to put in the little islands and the trees and other things that I see closer to me, but I do have to make sure that the background I'm content with, that I don't need to go back and add more to it later. I may fuss with it later, but at this point, any trees, any other things that I need to do, that's what I have to do, and then I can work more on the foreground. So again, that's just cleaning up some of the extra trees, and I want it to feel like it's a forest, so I felt that it needed a few more trees. I know that the trees that I'm going to add in the foreground are going to be darker, so those trees in the background, I want to reserve my darkest darks for the ones in the foreground, so I don't want to make those too black, too dark. So I am careful with the value transition, trying to keep that background as a unified whole as much as possible. In this passage, I've taken a little bit more burnt sienna in with the yellow ochre, and I'm mixing up the wet soil as this beautiful chunk of mossy land tucks into the water. I know I'm going to be painting over the top of it some of that moss, and so in this passage, I'm demonstrating working in layers. So I started with the brown, and then I'm going to build up some green, and you'll see how I take some of that green and I'm going to gently build a lighter mossy yellow green over the top of that, and eventually ending with sort of a bright yellow on top of all that. But I'll scumble my brush stroke over as that final layer of that yellow over the top, indicating that mossy passage. And in the meantime, I'm also working on what's in the water, and I jump back and forth from this little island to the other island. And that mixture of green is cadmium yellows. It's a variation of cadmium yellow, medium, and light. And I use some phthalo green as well as some phthalo blue. Sometimes I grab the ultramarine blue to mix it up with different shades. So again, this is another area where I encourage you to experiment with a little different shades of this and that. I noticed when I was looking at this moss that some of it had like a really interesting, I don't know if it's Kelly green, but it's like a phthalo green with a little bit of yellow. So it had sort of a bluish green, emerald green. So I let some of that just peek through. I thought it was really pretty. So now here I'm taking some of that more predominantly yellow and just sort of scumbling it over that bright green, allowing those colors to mix and play together. Now, as I've mentioned before, the reflection in the water is going to be darker. So to neutralize that green in the water so it's not quite as vibrant, I've added some of the burnt sienna and yellow ochre to that bright, vibrant green, and it knocks it down a few degrees of intensity. So in the water, it's present, but it's not as screaming at you as the top layer. So over here, now this patch of green, some of the green I used from the other little island, but not all of it because I wanted this one to be further back. Remember, if I'd painted them equal, they would have been our brain would have had a hard time sorting out which one is in front and which one is behind. So I'm aware of their spatial relationship and pushing that smaller one further back. I'm using cooler tones. See how they're bluer gray, bluer green, and lightly scumbling over just sort of a little bit more of a blue atmosphere over that passage. And so we can understand that that part is further back. I can use a little softer edges, and we understand there's a stepping stone there. And while I'm working on some of this passage in here, I want to talk to you a little about my upcoming France workshop. I'm really excited about this. It's in at the end of June 2022, and we've got some spots available, so we're just really excited, and it's finally happening. We've been excited about this for a few years. It's been put off because of COVID, and so we're finally seeing this come to fruition. So if you are interested, we are going to have a fantastic time. It's in the Toulouse area, 5 hours south of Paris. So, check out the link below. There's a lot of information on it. It's a 10-day course, and it's all-inclusive. And I'm just, because it was delayed for so long, I've had a chance to work on my book, and I will be taking parts of my plein air book and sharing it with the students as a workbook. So I'm excited to do that, and we're really looking forward to it. We've got a great group, and there's room for you to be a part, so check out the link. All right, so getting back to this. Now, I am taking sort of a grayish leaf mixture color. That's burnt sienna, ultramarine, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and white will make a gray base. Now I'm adding some yellow ochre and even a little cadmium yellow into that. Will make it a little bit more orangey into that sort of leaf mixture. You can see in the background old oak leaves and just forest floor color. So varying shades of that. Working on the floor back there. And you can see too, just by squinting at it, there are different shades throughout that forest floor. There was what appeared to be a little deer trail, maybe it was a goose trail, leading down to the water over here that I really liked. There was sort of a welcoming feature to it that I thought had an interesting aspect to this little island. And it opened up the way too to just sort of lead in the eye with the trees and the reflection in the water. So I'm taking, again, my darker mixture of burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and some yellow ochre into the water to create the darker reflection that I will be putting in the trees, of course. But right now I'm just blocking in the passage that I see in the water. I thought that this little island had a very nice cat paw type effect, so I'm taking a darker accent and tucking it into where the wet soil meets the water, and it has a nice accent quality, giving it that set in place anchor. With that same dark color, I'm blocking in the trees and just dropping them down, and as I get down to the base of the tree, I'm pressing a little harder, and that gives it just a nice foot to stand on. And so I wiggle a little bit with my brush. And as you can see here, I have sped up the camera a little. This whole painting took a few hours to paint. And so I did speed it up. And to paint these then, these young saplings, it might be a little bit different with a larger tree, but I sort of stagger the strokes. And you gently, and this is a dagger shaped brush, it's angled, dropping and twisting a little, and just gives a nice interest to a young sapling. So taking that forest floor color, and I'm sort of gently scumbling it up the base of the tree trunk, puts it in place. And I keep it cool along the forest floor because it is more in shadow even on an overcast day. And then I'm taking some lighter colored, just sort of a light gray, and I'm putting in some more saplings, different kinds of saplings, and they pick up a different light, and dropping those in. They have this wonderful sort of spindly quality as they sort of interlace among each other. And I try to really study trees, and even young trees, and how they work together and just grow, and their branches interlace. And I always want to encourage people to just bring their sketchbooks and get out and draw trees. Sketch them. It doesn't take long. It's funny how much we feel that we understand, and until you really get out and just pay attention to the patterns and the angles and the way that a branch would grow, and how a trunk is shaped, and how the roots sort of reach into the ground. Just make those observations, and it's amazing how your knowledge will develop. And now I'm coming back through here and just more or less refining the reflections into the water, and making sure that each one has that where it's connected to the tree above it. I want them to really exemplify the adjoining tree. And so that distant island back there, the trees were just curved and sort of gently leaning into the water. Some were dark and some were light. And I want to make sure that they're not as dark as the ones up front. So that dark mixture is a little bit lighter than the one in the foreground. And again here too on this side, I'm matching the reflections in the water with these trees directly above, just to make sure again that everything matches. Now in this passage, I'm taking a little bit of alizarin crimson and some ultramarine blue and some white, and I'm mixing this violet mixture because I saw it in the water closer to me. It's just a soft lavender color as the lightness transitioned into this gray that was nearer to me, and I just wanted a little subtle hint of it. So that's just what I'm doing. As I approach closer, I'm adding a little bit more of that gray color. But I thought that subtle hint of lavender added a really nice touch. I just want to take this moment, too, to tell you that this painting is available. I will have it on my website soon. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm taking a dry, soft brush, and I wanted this whole passage of light paint, and where the movement of light is, to be smooth. It's the surface of water. And I don't do this very often, but this is an interesting technique where I'm smoothing out the brush strokes because I want this to be glassy smooth. And I might even, I do take the brush a little bit into the background, and I soften some of the choppier passages where I wanted it a little bit smoother as well. But anywhere where I felt that the eye was stopping because of a harsh brush stroke, I'm just taking a soft, dry brush. And I do dry and clean the brush off on my paper towel often. But in this passage here, that is what I'm doing. I'm just cleaning up the surface of the water. I'll come back through and add some more ripples, but this is it right now. And I want to be careful with these final ripples that I add in the water that I don't evenly stair step them. It's our tendency to make them like stair steps, so I'm consciously deciding that to stagger them. And I'm thinking too about my original composition of leading the eye in sort of a reverse C design. So without getting too fussy, I'm just laying a brush stroke down and leaving it. And now what I'm doing is I'm adding one of our guests of honor, actually two of them. I'm painting a little goose, couple of geese back there. And of course, as soon as I want one, they're gone. So I'm sort of making it up, looking at them as they're staring at me. But yeah, so that was a lot of fun to put one in. So as I wrap this up, I want to thank you all for joining me and for soldiering on through all the squawking and honking. And I really do enjoy making these videos and being with you guys. And I wanted to thank you all so much for just being a part of what I'm doing here. And I do hope to see you at one of my workshops. And I just think that this is a really great thing. And I hope that you get to get out and plein air paint wherever you are. I really believe the world is a better place when people can get out and paint. So I wish you the very best, and thank you so much for joining me. All right, see you next time. All right, everybody, well, that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed it and were able to find some nuggets in here that you could use in your own plein air adventures. And thank you for joining me today at Goose Pond, and be sure to check out those links below. I would love to see you at some time at one of my workshops. All right, you guys, I will see you next time. All right, bye-bye. Shh. After waiting a couple years, this year, summer 2022, we will finally get to see our workshop in France take place. There are a couple spots left for people if they're interested in joining. I will have all the links below. The dates are not what you just saw there. They are June 27th to July 7th of 2022 this year. We are on the books for next year, 2023, if you would like to join us. This workshop takes place 5 hours south of Paris, in the most beautiful places in the world. This is a unique and incredible opportunities. It's a 10-day workshop, mostly plein air. I will have an evening where I do a portrait demonstration. But we will be out to all these different places to plein air paint and make unforgettable memories and just really break down the essentials of plein air painting in truly the most unique place in the world. This workshop is all-inclusive. The only thing it doesn't cover is your flight and just a couple meals, but everything else is taken care of. And as well as all of that, we will be spending a couple days in Paris. Non-teaching, they're just join along with me as we look at really cool places in Paris, the Musée d'Orsay and the Louvre. Maybe just a couple, 2-3 days. We'll have to see how things go with COVID and everything, but that is the plan. So let me know if you'd like to be on the books for 2023 or if you want to join us this year. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Hope to see you this year.